We now continue with more of the Mark Milton Show with The Smash on 590 The Fan and 590thefan.com.
All right, welcome back to the Mark Milton Show with The Smash. Today we have a very special guest. We are honored to have the state treasurer for the great state of Missouri, Scott Fitzpatrick. Scott, welcome to the program.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Well, we are so happy to have you here. We thought we'd talk a little bit about your background, which I know Smash read up on you and he was very, very impressed. You started a dock repair company when you were in high school. Is that correct?
That is correct. Yeah, I started out working on boat docks when I was in high school, and kind of focused on that when I was in college, and after I graduated from college, building that into a boat dock manufacturing and construction company.
Buddy, I got to salute you, because all I was doing when I was 17, when you started your thing, I was like, mowing lawns, hoping somebody let me rake their leaves or something like that, man. You're building docks, and you're taking care of maritime type of stuff. You are to be heralded, sir.
Well, mowing lawns, at least you were doing something. A lot of kids when they were 17 weren't doing anything. So I think that you should be commended as well.
Well, I appreciate it, because back then it was just called mowing lawns. Now it's landscaping.
So you're doing this when you're in high school. You go to college. I mean, the business continues to grow. Tell us about that. Tell us about that growth, what you envisioned for the company, and kind of where it is today.
Yeah, well, it was kind of the way I got into actually building docks. It was kind of an accident. Really, it was there was a storm that went through Table Rock Lake area, and it tore some docks up, and I saw that on the news. And so I got in my truck and drove over and found the docks that the news had reported on being destroyed. And I found a guy that owned one of them and asked him if he'd let me give him a bid on building him a dock, and he said yes. And so I gave him a bid, and he put me in touch with his neighbor, because his dock actually was lifted out of the water and landed on his neighbor's dock.
Oh, boy.
And so they both needed new docks. And so I was able to get both of those people to sign contracts for new docks. And that was probably, that was a few months before I graduated high school.
Huh.
And so I knew a little bit about, I'd worked on docks, for a few summers before that. And, so I knew enough about docks to put together a bid. It was kind of doing a material takeoff and, an estimation on how much labor it was going to take. And so at that point I outsourced the manufacturing. I didn't have the equipment or the facility to manufacture the components at that time. And so I basically outsourced that part of it and put together a crew, and we went out and started building the docks. And, I kind of just took the cash flow from those deals and started advertising, bought some equipment, and, the one thing led to another. And that first year, so that year I graduated from high school, we did about $675,000 in sales.
Wow.
And
really?
And that was kind of how it got started out in that first year. It was then going on to college. I hired somebody to be kind of a sales manager, and I took the checkbook and I was basically keeping the books on a laptop in my dorm room, and was traveling back and forth on the weekends, checking on things, checking on the jobs and whatnot. And the year after that, we doubled. We did that first full year I was in college, we did $1.2 million in sales.
Wow.
And then doubled it again the next year, and that was 2008. So 2008, towards the end of 2008, things got pretty challenging. We had and earlier in 2008 had signed one job that was about $1 million, so it made up about 40% of our revenue for the year. And that job ran into some financial challenges, probably 70% of the way through it. And so we were owed quite a bit of money. The bank that financed it was Washington Mutual, and they were one of the banks that failed during the Great Recession. And so there was some challenges with cash flow on that job. And the last part of the order ended up getting canceled. So I was in a pretty bad situation there for a little bit, during the recession, and had to kind of claw my way out of that. And when we got kind of back on stable footing, that's kind of that kind of experience dealing with the recession and having to fight with government on the little work that we could get to get permitted was kind of the thing that started getting me interested in politics. I really didn't care about politics in high school or first part of college for that matter, and started paying attention a little bit later on.
Well, Scott Fitzpatrick was sworn in on January 14th of 1919, 47th Treasurer of the state of Missouri. And he is with us here on the Mark Milton Show. Let me just fire this off at you, Scott, and that is, working as much as you did, how in the world did you wind up with a wife and 2 kids, man?
Well, it's a good question. No, I got engaged in December of 2012. So after I won the election, I decided I was going to ask my wife to marry me.
Yeah.
And so she said yes, and ended up moving back to Southwest Missouri. And it's just really a balancing act. I'm fortunate in that at the time the legislature was a part-time. I was only in Jefferson City about 4 months a year for 4 days a week. And, with the business, I had I still have some really great people there that do a wonderful job managing the day-to-day operations of the company. And so it was really just kind of balancing and relying on folks at AmeriCorp to do their part. Have good staff. When I was in the House of Representatives, had a great staff in that. And then when in 2015, my wife and I had twins, and so that was a surprise for us. And we spent 4 months in the NICU with them when they were born. They have some health complications and some developmental challenges, and so it's been definitely a big experience. And I'd be lying to you if I said that at times it wasn't challenging. I mean, it is. It's challenging to balance all that, especially in a statewide office. But I feel like my wife has been very supportive. She's an incredible mother and incredible wife, and like I said, so I guess I'm just blessed to be surrounded with good people who have been supportive of me.
That's awesome. And one of the advantages you have as well is you are also a licensed pilot, correct?
That's correct. Yeah, I'm a pilot. So I do commute. I do commute back and forth between Jefferson City and home very frequently via airplane. Yeah.
Okay, so you're budget chair, and I believe was it 2017 you get or 2018 you get appointed by the governor to become treasurer?
Well, let's see. So I got to the House. I got on the budget committee. I was, one of the first things they ask you when you get into the House is what committees you want to be on. And I hadn't really given a whole lot of thought to that. I knew why I was there. It was because I was frustrated with government, and I wanted to try to get the attention of bureaucrats and, help make government more responsive to people. And so I was trying to think of the best way to do that, and I figured the best way to do it would be to control their money. And then so that's why I focused on the budget, and ended up vice chairman my second term in the House, and then chairman my third term in the House. So then it was in, I guess, December of 2018, after Josh Hawley was elected to the U.S. Senate, Treasurer Schmidt was appointed by the governor to become Attorney General Schmidt to fill the office vacated by Josh Hawley. And then after that, he had to, the governor had to appoint somebody to be the treasurer. And so, the governor and he asked me to be the treasurer, and I accepted, and I was honored to have that opportunity. And so in January of last year, I was sworn in as treasurer.
So at 31 years old, he becomes the treasurer of Missouri, statewide office holder. I mean, it's pretty remarkable. And I actually I was fortunate. The treasurer asked me to be on his transition team, and I got to learn a lot about their office. And it's really pretty amazing the stuff they do. One of the big things, unclaimed property. So people who, maybe they have a safety deposit box at their local bank, they pass away, nobody goes to claim it. They have an entire room at the treasurer's office of unclaimed property. Not just, so there's money that's out there that ends up getting kicked back to the state if somebody dies or if somebody doesn't claim it. But there's also physical stuff that their office literally goes through and auctions off and puts into a fund. Talk a little bit about that, Scott.
Well, I tell you what, Scott, the reason I never claimed any of that stuff? I figured that was the government looking for me, But that's for real.
Well, it's probably not a. It's probably if you have a warrant out, we might find you.
Okay.
I don't know. No,
Okay.
we're not the law. We're not law enforcement. Although, funny story, we used to. So a lot of times you get a safe deposit box, and it has firearms. You have firearms in them, and so I guess at a certain point, this is long before I was the treasurer. That we keep all that stuff in a big safe room in the basement of our office building across from the Capitol, the Truman Building, and the building's protected by Capitol Police. And I guess one day, Capitol Police came into the unclaimed property office and said, "Guys, we got a little bit of a problem here." And they said, "What's that?" He said, "Well, you have more guns than we do. We need to," because we had all these guns that we'd gotten out of safe deposit boxes stored in the Truman Building. So we now have moved those over. The Highway Patrol has stores our guns for us, and if we have somebody that comes to claim a safe deposit box that contained a firearm, we have a process to bring the firearm down from Highway Patrol and do a handoff to return that property. But yeah, we get all kinds of stuff. Mark mentioned the safe deposit boxes. We get about 1,000 of those a year turned over to us from banks across the state whose renters hadn't paid rent on them for 5 years or more. They have to drill those, send them in to us. And you find a lot of interesting things in safe deposit boxes from, you find, obviously family heirlooms, jewelry,
Sure.
things like that. Sometimes you find, we've had documents that were signed by U.S. presidents. We had an original animation from the movie The Little Mermaid. One of the animations was in there.
No way.
So you just find a lot of different stuff. We had one, some lady put a clown suit in a safe deposit box, and we had, not sure, one person's trash is another's treasure, I guess.
Yeah.
So you just never know. But we also get, large sums of money turned over to us. We get about $100 million a year turned over to us, and cash, well, not physical cash, but in money that's transferred to us from holders of unclaimed property. And so we work really hard. We have about 17 people that their job is to return this money all day, every day, all year long.
Wow.
And we returned about $45 million last year. So we're getting a lot more in every year than we're able to return. But we're that $45 million we returned last year. That was a record. That's the most ever been returned in a single year. So
That's astounding.
we're doing the best. We're doing the best we can, but we always try to raise awareness about it and talk about it because there's things people say. Well, what would cause unclaimed property? Well, we get life insurance proceeds if somebody passes away and they have a life insurance policy. If the company can't locate the beneficiary, that gets turned over to us. We have uncashed checks that get turned over to us. So I had a lady I know from back home that saw her name on our unclaimed property list when we printed it in the paper, and she said, "Well, what do I have?" And so I looked it up for her, and she had $10,000 worth of dividends that had been paid to her from AT&T. AT&T was sending dividend checks to her old address. She never updated her address with the company. And so all these paper checks that AT&T had been mailing out had been going uncashed. And over time, that added up to be a lot of money. And so, she got $10,000 back that she didn't even know she had. So that's, I encourage everybody to look on our website. You can go to showmemoney.com or treasurer.mo.gov. There's a search bar right at the top. You can type in your name and see if you've got unclaimed property.
Well, nobody really listens to our show, but hopefully if they do, they will take that information
I'm going to do it.
and they will get some unclaimed property. That was a word I always struggled with in law school was they talked about it in trust and estates class. Escheat, if something doesn't get claimed through probate, the money escheats to the state. Am I pronouncing that right?
Yeah. So, there's times where, if you can't figure out a way, I mean, if somebody can't locate the owner, that money comes to us. Yeah, but there's an escheatment process. That is a difficult word that takes place. They call them escheatment laws, which governs what comes to us.
Excellent. So, tell us some of your other duties and responsibilities as the treasurer.
Before you do, I got to say this, man. This is like the coolest dude right here, and he's like the state treasurer. And these are stories people don't know, man. Bravo to you for what you're doing over there, Scott.
I appreciate the support.
Yes, sir.
So Mark, so what we, the other things we do. So the treasurer's office has just under 50 employees total, and like I said, about 17 or 18 of them are in unclaimed property. We run all the banking services for the state, so we manage the banking relationships across the state. We have over 150 deposit accounts or deposit contracts with banks across the state of Missouri. A lot of that is collection accounts because we basically have an office of the state, or we have state employees in every county of the state, and so when fee revenue comes in locally, if they're collecting money for certain things, they have to have a place to deposit that money. So we have deposit accounts that money gets collected into, and then we manage basically all the payments for the state. So with all those 150 accounts, 150 plus accounts, that money we transfer that money around and use it to cover payments of the state. So when we have we run about I want to say about 2 million, million and a half, 2 million paper checks per year. Payments that we approve, and another 3 to 4 million ACH payments per year that get processed by our office, which is about $30 billion a year of payments that we run. We are in charge of reconciling all those accounts every month. So you figure we all have to reconcile our bank accounts at home. Well, we have 150 or 60 accounts to reconcile every month, and that's in addition to when we put CDs out with banks, things like that, make sure the interest payments that we're receiving are correct. So that's the banking division. Banking division does quite a bit. They're a very important function within the office and, quite frankly, state government. If, the treasurer's office is an office that if we didn't show up to work one day, state government would essentially be shut down because we wouldn't be able to pay any bills. And that's what the people in banking do, and they do a really good job at it. We also run the investments for the state. So all that cash that we receive, we just received a bunch of money from the federal government for this CARES Act thing. Believe it or not, when you prepare to receive, $2.5 billion or $2.1 billion, within a few days, that actually takes some planning because state law requires us to have those deposits collateralized. So we can't just dump a couple $1 billion into a bank account and just walk away. We have to make sure that if that bank were to, because FDIC insurance only covers each depositor up to $250,000. Mm-hmm. So obviously, if we lost, if we dumped a couple $1 billion into a bank and they went bust, $250,000 would not be sufficient to recover that loss. So we require the financial institutions to collateralize our deposits, meaning they have to provide us with securities in the form of like United States Treasuries or agency bonds, Federal Home Loan Bank letters of credit, things like that they can provide to us to collateralize that. That way, if the bank were to fail while they were holding a large amount of our money, we would have some way to recover that. So we have to manage that collateral program, make sure that we have the appropriate amount of collateral on hand. And then we have to figure out where to put that money to try to earn a return for the state. And so we have an investments division that runs that program that basically is in charge of trying to figure out the best way to invest that money to earn a return on taxpayer money. And within that division, we also run what's called the Linked Deposit Program. We call it Missouri First. And that's a program where we'll put money in a bank at a discounted rate of interest. So we'll give them a discount from market rate on the deposit, if they would normally be paying if we were going to give them $1 million in a CD that would normally pay 2%, they'll get it at 1%. And in order to, and the back end of that deposit is linked to a specific loan that bank makes. So they basically submit an application with a borrower, and that borrower's application comes to us. We approve it. We put the money in the bank. The borrower gets that loan, but the borrower gets a substantial discount on the interest rate that they pay. So if it's a 30% discount. So if the borrower is going to be paying 5% interest on their loan, the bank would have to give that loan to them for 3.5%. So it's a good program that gets it allows the state to work with our banks across the state to provide lower cost capital to businesses that are trying to expand and improve the economy in the state. So that's what the investments division is.
That's awesome. The last thing I want to talk to you about, if you have time. So obviously I'm a tax lawyer, so 529s are something that comes up very, very often with my clients, and I always encourage people, especially, now with the new change in the federal tax law, the funds in a 529 can be used to fund K through 12 education up to $10,000 a year. So people that are planning to send their kids to private schools, which is pretty common in the St. Louis area, I always encourage them to invest in a 529 early, let that money grow tax-free, and you can use it for K through 12, up to $10,000 a year, and then also, obviously the money grows. Hopefully it can be used for college. Tell us what what your role is with respect to 529s.
Yeah, so we run the 529 plan for the state and the treasurer's office. It's governed by a board that I'm the chairman of, and the board basically relies on the staff of the treasurer's office to administer the program. And so we do that. We also run, and I'm just going to throw in a plug here for the ABLE accounts. MoAble
Absolutely
is so it's an offshoot of the 529 program, and it's for people with disabilities. So 529 is an education savings account, basically, that has tax advantages and obviously is a good tool to use to save for college for people, and now can be used for K-12 education. ABLE accounts can do all that and more for people with disabilities. They can be used for general living expenses for people with disabilities, and it allows those people who want to contribute to society, but who may have been unable to get a job because they can't have assets, because if they do have assets, they would lose benefits like Medicaid and SSI that they have to survive. And so what it's done is it's told these people, hey, you don't have to worry about having assets as long as you have an ABLE account. You still get all the tax advantages that you get on a 529 plan in terms of you get a tax deduction for your contributions to the account. You don't pay tax on the money when you take it out as long as it's used for qualifying expense. And the investment earnings in the account are tax-free. So it's kind of like a Roth IRA, except that you get the added benefit of getting the deduction on your contributions. So on the 529 side, like you said, the federal law was expanded to allow K-12 expenditures as an allowable use of a 529 plan. And so what that's done is it's basically given people who are paying tuition to send their kids to private school an opportunity to put money into a 529 account and then get a state tax deduction on basically those contributions that they're then using to pay their tuition. So it's a good way to save 5.5% on your state income tax or in state income tax on your payments for K-12 tuition. And so we've tried to promote that a lot, let people know about it, because we think people need to be taking advantage of that. And the other thing we tell people is, even if your kid's going to school next year and you didn't start a 529 account, it's not too late to use to benefit from it. Obviously, it's better to start early because you can save, and those investment earnings compound on itself, and the account grows. And so ultimately, you're going to save yourself money, in terms of your principal paying college, because you have those investment earnings to use. But even if your kid's getting ready to go to college next year, open up a 529 account and put your money that you're going to use to pay tuition into the 529 account before you pay your tuition, because all that has to happen in order to get that deduction, the money has to go into the account, and then it can go straight back out to the account to pay tuition, and you get that tax deduction.
Yeah, and you can do up to, if you're a married couple, you can do $16,000 a year off your Missouri income, wow. $8,000 if you're individual. Now, you don't get a federal deduction when you do it, correct, but it grows federally tax-free, which is great.
Nice.
Right. Yeah. No federal deduction. Yeah. So that's a good point. A point of clarification. The tax deduction is only on your state income taxes. But like you said, if you start early and you've got, if you start a 529 account when your kid is born, you could potentially, if everything times out right, you could potentially have an account with, a majority of the balance is your investment earnings as opposed to your principal. And, when you withdraw that, you won't be paying any federal income tax. So it's a good program.
Beautiful. That is Scott Fitzpatrick. He is your state treasurer, Missouri. I tell you what, man, I do a lot of roles here at the Mark Milton Show. Everybody just calls me to Smash, Scott, but Sometimes they call me the great Smashtradamus because I look into the future. And with that, I'm saying Governor Scott Fitzpatrick someday, buddy, because I have become so enlightened by you. You're such just a sharp dude, man. Salute.
Hey, I appreciate that. Smashtradamus. I'm gonna put that one in my back pocket. I like that.
All right, buddy. We'll catch you on another occasion, and that's the way we do it. We turn you on to good stuff, turn you on to good people, turn you on to the treasurer of the state of Missouri.
Thank you so much.
Hey, thanks, guys.
All right. Man, now that was pretty cool. That was a cool dude right there.
Absolutely.
You know, and the guy is like in charge of so many things, but he's on top of the game. You can tell he's on top of the game. He
and
knows
he's
his stuff.
32 years old.
Daggone it. At 32, I was still chasing women, man. Daggone it. And I shouldn't have been. I was married. Hey, that was a different story. Nevertheless, there you have it. Mark Milton. More coming up in just a moment here. I don't know exactly what's next, but it's going to be good, all right? And for our international listeners, what I just said is, hold on. Uno momento, por favor. Por favor. Por favor.